Good morning, guys. This is Nick from Avid Automotive. I'm here today to talk to you about transmission services. We're going to learn a little bit about transmission fluid. We're going to kind of debunk some old school thought processes on if you should do transmission services or not. And in my opinion, just to kind of get this out of the way and save you a lot of time, if you don't agree with me, you don't have to watch my whole video. But I am a big supporter of transmission services. I shot a video before about, kind of vehicle maintenance and why it's important and why auto manufacturers don't really recommend a lot of services in their service intervals. And basically what it comes down to is, just to kind of clear this up, once again, the automotive manufacturer, such as, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, any of the European car companies, Japanese car companies, all of them have one kind of thing that they want to do, and that's just to get you through the warranty period with the lowest cost of ownership possible. So, you go to trade the car in 100,000 miles later, and you go, hey man, I own this car for 100,000 miles. I barely had to do anything. Did some oil changes, threw some tires on it, maybe put some brakes on it, changed the filter here and there. It was a great car, give me a new one. Well, the problem with that is people are keeping their cars way longer than they used to. Your mom or dad or uncle used to trade his car in when it hit 75,000, 100,000, whatever. And he would go get a brand new one. So, of course, he thought a Chevy was great, or a Ford was great, or, a Toyota was great, whatever. So when you look in these service and these, the service manual, and you go under maintenance, it usually says, hey, don't worry about changing the transmission fluid, you'll be fine. Yeah, the guy keeping the car for 100,000 miles probably will be fine. But the poor sap that buys it used and puts another 150,000 miles on it, probably will be putting a transmission in it. And 9 times out of 10, if it wasn't because of manufacturer's defect or it was a shit transmission, it's usually because the fluid broke down so much that it had so many contaminants in it and it started to varnish and it couldn't take the temperature anymore, and it basically just had a catastrophic meltdown. So I always say change your transmission fluid at least every 50,000 miles. If there's a filter you can change, I would do it. A lot of filters in transmission sometimes aren't serviceable because they're only there in case the transmission literally grenades. So usually just changing the fluid is good enough. If there is kind of a filter with some kind of element in it that you can service by taking the pan down and changing it, that's usually a good idea too. It's a chance to put a new gasket on there in case the gasket, the transmission pan gasket was starting to weep a little bit. Now you got a nice new one in there. But it's really important to make sure that you use the correct transmission fluid for the car. That is very, very important. Kind of a good rule of thumb is if you can get the fluid from the dealer to rule out, any chance of putting the wrong stuff in there, that's a good idea. Making sure that you follow the correct service procedure on how to change it, how to check the level. There's some tips and tricks on how to do things easier. If the transmission has no leak and the fluid level was fine and you removed 5 quarts from it and you put 5 quarts back in, well, you can do the math. That's probably just fine, and you don't have to go through this whole rigmarole of checking it. But a lot of people tend to say, and this is kind of an old school thing that, possibly your dad, most likely definitely your dad's dad or your mom's mom, used to say is, don't change your transmission fluid, it'll blow up the transmission. And there was a little truth to that. Older transmissions in older cars tended to build up a lot of sediment and kind of nasty goop in the transmission. And then when newer transmission fluids started to come out, where they had a lot of detergents in them and a lot of different kind of agents and protective stuff in them, that transmission fluid, when you put it into an old worn out transmission, sometimes would loosen up that sediment, and it would basically just send all of that nasty crap through the transmission, and it actually would cause problems. That was truth. The problem is that hasn't been true for, I would say, roughly around I would say at least 20 years. I mean, the cars that this was going to be a problem on are basically squished into cubes and got turned into, 20 other cars. So I am a big supporter of transmission transmission services. There are some cars that it's not a good idea to do a transmission flush on because you can cause some issues. But the removal of the old fluid and then installation of new fluid with a new filter is probably one of the best lines of defense that you could possibly do for your transmission, besides staying out of the gas pedal so much and being a little bit more patient on the road, and also not towing a bulldozer with a Toyota Camry. So that's my opinion. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comments. If you'd like me to shoot a video pertaining to something that you're interested in, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. And happy motoring.